I'm going to do a walkthrough of my brief introduction to QGIS Practical. The data associated with Practical is available on my GitHub training page. You can see here, and we're basically just going to try and recreate a map that looks something like this in QGIS. QGIS is an open source GIS program, which is relatively intuitive. It's designed to open and interrogate and display and analyze different GIS layers. Now, GIS layers are files that sit on your computer, and they can be in lots of different formats, just like a photograph can be a JPEG or a PNG or whatever. You can have lots of different GIS data formats. And these formats can be kind of categorized into two kinds, vector data and raster data. The vector data is made up of dots and lines, essentially. And we're going to start by looking at different vector data sets. And these are useful for describing outlines of shapes of countries, of areas, or locations of individual organisms, let's say. So this Practical is going to start by loading a simple background layer of the country Tanzania. Now we can go to the browser window here, which basically just has an overview of your file system, and it rather neatly basically just shows you all of the GIS compatible layers. And so I've navigated to a place where I've unzipped the zip file from my Practical web page, and I can double click on this layer, and it shows me that the G package file has got a data set in it called Tanzania. If I double click on that, it loads it. The layer shows up in the layers window, which is typically in the bottom left hand corner, and then in the map window here you can actually see the layer itself. And this is the layer, it's an outline of Tanzania. Okay, great. When I have a background of a country, I typically don't like it to be purple. I want it to be a different colour, maybe a nice green. So I can double click on the layer in the layers menu, and I get a whole bunch of options. I want to go to the symbology tab. It allows me to change the way that it's symbolically displayed in the map window. Okay, and the fill is this purple colour. I can choose a different colour. I've got some recent colours that I've used. I can choose a colour up here. I'm just going to use this recent green colour because I quite like it. If I click apply, you can see the map changes behind it. Do I like that? Do I want to change it? Well, I can go back and make it a bit lighter or darker or something if I want to change it at all, and I can see it change in the background. Okay, great. So I've got this layer, and it's loaded, and I've changed it to a very nice, well, I like it, neutral green background. Let's add another layer. Well, this is the country, but I really want to kind of see where the district boundaries are, let's say. Okay, I've got this layer called administrative areas. This is a .shp file. That's an Esri shape file, a different format of vector data. Okay, when I click on that, it loads this layer in. It makes it, you can see that there are lots of lines, and those lines equate to the administrative boundaries of Tanzania. Great. What if I want to find out about what these areas are? I can use this little info tool. Okay, let's click here. And now I see that I've got this little info tab. This info tab relates to the underlying metadata within this layer for this particular feature within the layer. Okay, so this attribute table is basically just a spreadsheet of data. Name, Arusha. Okay, so this is the administrative district of Arusha in Tanzania. Okay, let's choose a different one. Okay, and now I've got a different district, Tabora, and so on. Great. Okay, What if I want to go kind of in the other direction? How do I look at the metadata associated with this? Well, I can open the attribute table for this layer. I can do that by doing right click, open attribute table, or I could select the layer and then choose the little icon which says open attribute table. Great. Now these are all of the attributes associated with these. Okay, and now I can see all of the names again. Okay, oh, Kilimanjaro, where's that? If I click on that, it highlights in the map behind me, so I can interrogate in two different directions. Yeah. Okay, and then here's our Arusha, where we started. Great. I can select or deselect layers within the map so that I can get a bit of I can interrogate and understand what's there. Okay, now I've got two layers, but now I can't see the layer underneath. Okay, what I want is I want to just show the borders and then see through to the underlying nice neutral colour underneath. So I go to the layer properties. Okay, I'm going to go simple fill in the symbology tab. Instead of having a solid fill, I'm going to have no brush. Okay, and now I'm seeing through to the underlying layer. Great. So now I've got two layers stuck over the top of each other. Let's have another layer. We have a KML file called lakes. Unsurprisingly, it's got lakes in. And inside it has this feature class called TZA water areas. Not a brilliant name. And it displays with some random red outlines. I don't know about you, but I don't associate red outlines with water. So let's go in to the properties, double clicking and choosing a different kind of symbology. It has this kind of default for embedded symbols for this layer, but I don't like that. Let's go back to single symbol. Okay, and let's go simple fill. All right, lakes should be blue. Great. Let's see what that looks like by clicking the apply button. Great. I've got this kind of like dark outline for this layer. I don't like that. Let's get rid of it. Instead of having a solid line, let's have no line. Okay, that looks a bit better. Now I've got my lakes layer. At the moment, I can't see the administrative boundaries. That's because the lakes layer is sitting over the top of the administrative areas. So I can click on the layer and drag it down. And now you can see the administrative area layer is on top, and then the lakes layer, and then the background layer. Great. Finally, if you want to change the name, double click, go to source. Let's call this lakes. Great. And now we've got a more intuitive name for our layer called lakes. Great. And now I've got three different background layers sitting on my map. Now, I'm an ecologist, and this practical is really kind of aimed at ecology, biology students. Maybe we care about protected areas. I have this Esri shapefile of protected areas. Let's double click on that and see what it gives us. Okay, I've got quite a lot of blobs here. What's in that layer? Let's use the attribute table to find out. Okay, here's some columns. I've got a column called name. Okay, that must be the name of the protected area. Status. I've got a bunch of different statuses. Game reserve, national park, blank. Proposed game reserve. Right. What I'd really like to do is to focus this on just some areas of interest. Let's say national parks. So, how do I filter this layer so that I can just see national parks? Let's go to the layer properties. Okay, and in the source tab, we can see that we've got provide feature filter. I want to filter based on particular features. I can create a query using the query tab in the bottom right hand corner of this window. Okay, which field do I want to use for the filter? Status. Okay, and I'm creating a query down here. Status equals what? National Park. How was that spelled? I can't quite remember. I can use this sample button here, and it basically gives me a quick list of what's in this column. Right, National Park is what I want. Double click, and now I've got a query. Status equals National Park. Great. Is that going to work? Let's press the test button. This is going to give me 13 rows. That's 13 national parks. Great. Click OK, click apply, and now I can see I've got a few less blobs. Great. Actually, these blobs, again, are kind of masking some of the lake areas. They're masking. So maybe when we've got 4 layers sitting on top of each other, maybe this needs to be see-through in some way so I can see some of the underlying things. Let's go to symbology. Let's change the simple fill from solid to some diagonal lines. How does that look? Okay, now I can see through. Maybe I need that line to be a little bit thicker. Let's see. Apply. Oh, I've got a nice dark outline. But I've used black for the outline in the administrative areas. So let's make the outline, we can see a little preview here, the same as the in-time hashing. Oh, right, now I can see my protected areas, or more correctly, national parks on my map. Maybe I should change the name to National Parks. Great. Okay. Maybe on my map I'd also like to show the names of those national parks. I can create labels for each of these areas. If I go to the Labels tab, the default is no labels. I want a single label. Right. I can use one of the attributes in the attribute table to make the label. What do I want to use? I want to use name. Okay, great. Let's look at the text. Let's think apply. Right, there are the names. They're a little bit small for me. Let's make them a bit bigger. Text size. What text size? 12. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's a bit bigger. I still can't see it that well. There's this nice buffer feature that basically puts a white blob around the outside of the name. Okay, and yeah, maybe we can change the style of the text if we want. Okay, doesn't like that. Let's just make it a bit bigger. There we go. And now I can see Kilimanjaro National Park, Serengeti National Park. Great. Now I have 4 different layers: administrative areas, national parks, lakes, and a background Tanzania on my map. Now, as I said, I'm an ecologist and I care about ecology data, so maybe I want to add the distribution of an organism on this. Now, it just so happens somebody has sent me a text file that has the coordinates of their favourite pioneer tree. Now, text files are not inherently spatial files, and so we need to use a special tool to be able to add a text file onto our map. Layer, add layer, add delimited text layer. Okay, so I've been given a simple text file called Diospirus pioneering tree. Open. Okay, and so it reads in, and this is basically just a spreadsheet in text format, and it uses a tab delimiter. Okay, often people use CSVs, but if you kind of use the CSV file format, the preview doesn't show it recognizing the column boundaries. So it should be custom delimited tab. Yep. Oh, now I've got some ID, some name, and some coordinate columns. Now, text files are not inherently spatial. So if we've got a spreadsheet with some columns that show coordinates, we need to tell the GIS what kind of coordinates they are. Are they latitude, longitude? Are they degrees, minutes, seconds? Are they decimal degrees? Are they a national UTM grid of eastings and northings, or whatever? You're probably most familiar with latitude and longitude, and QGIS has been kind of clever here with the geometry definition to recognise that lon probably stands for longitude, which is the x, and lat probably stands for latitude, right? And what kind of coordinates are they? Well, this setup is decimal degrees, and the decimal degree coordinate reference system is this one. It's the project one. It's the default. It's WGS 84. If in doubt, use the default. Have a look where it shows up on the map. Okay, let's add that layer. Close. Ah, great. Now I've got a whole bunch of dots. The person that sent me this map, or actually pointed to me on the internet, said, here's Diaspirus from Tanzania. Great. Actually, I can't see these dots very well. Let's make them a bit bigger. Symbology, size, let's make it 4. Great, I can see these dots now. You may notice, let's use the zoom to zoom in. Some of these dots aren't in Tanzania. It turns out that data you get provided or you download from the internet may not always be super reliable, and you should always look at your data and think, right, is this what I want to use? No, actually, I want to filter some of this out. I want to get rid of these ones that aren't in Tanzania and just look at the distribution within Tanzania. I can use my GIS to select points by their location. Okay, there's this tool, Vector Research Tools, select by location. I'm going to select Diaspirus that are in Tanzania. Let's do that. Run. You can see that now it's selected. The default selection colour is yellow. It's now selected all of the dots that are inside Tanzania. Hold on. Let's look a little bit more closely at these dots here. Oh, and more specifically, you often find that with different layers, you have different resolutions of those layers, which are kind of really simplified versions of the world and which are more complicated. And you can see that the two layers that we've got loaded, administrative areas in Tanzania, are different resolutions, different detail. One of them represents a very detailed coastline and the other doesn't. Okay, and that means that these points that are quite close to the coast have been missed off. This is very common, a thing that happens and you should be aware of when you're kind of doing this kind of distribution data work. So what we'd like to do is we maybe try that search, and this time we should use not Tanzania but administrative areas, and we are trying to select Diaspirus within the administrative areas boundaries. Okay, let's run that. Great, now these points have been selected. Let's jump back to the whole map using the zoom to the extent of the whole map. And now we can see these coastal points have been selected, but these ones that are outside of Tanzania have not been selected. Great. So what we'd like to do now is we'd like to create a properly spatial layer from these selected points, so we can export Save selected features as. Okay, let's only save the ones inside Tanzania. Great. Let's create a geo package. Why not? It's the default. Where are we going to put this file? Let's put them in the same directory where all the other stuff is, and let's call it Diospirus Tanzania, because it's Diospirus within Tanzania. Add save file to map. Okay, great. Now you can see we've got some new dots appear. Let's get rid of these old dots. Now we can see these new dots, but they're pretty small again. Let's have a look at making them a bit bigger. 4 we used last time, or we can maybe just use a default red marker. Great. Okay. Now I know that actually Diospirus is maybe there's more than one taxa within this data set. So rather than use a simple marker, rather than use a single symbol, let us categorize our markers based on taxon. Okay, if we hit the classify button, we can see that there's actually 2 different taxa within this data set. There is the Diospirus laureana and a subspecies. So we want to maybe visualize these differently. Click apply. Now we can see we've got 2 different colors. This one doesn't show up very well. I can change that color. Let's make it a bit more yellow. Let's make it a bit brighter yellow. Does that work better? Yeah, a little bit better. Okay, and then it's got this default all other. Probably don't need that. Great. Now I have my Diospirus in Tanzania, and I've got the species and I've got the subspecies, and they're visually differentiated. I can see which ones are in protected areas, I can see which ones are not, and this is my final map I've recreated. Great. I've done all that work. I don't want to lose this work. I want to be able to recreate this map later on. So what I want to do is I want to save a project. Click the little save button. Okay, and I'm going to create a new project, QGIS project. QGIS projects are essentially just the instructions on how to recreate these maps, which file, which layers to load, what colour to make them. So I'm just going to stick this in the same place that I've got the rest of my data. Okay, and let's call this my first project. Save. Okay, so I can see I've got a QGIS project, and this allows me to do something drastic like totally trash my project. Where's it gone? I can just load it back in by clicking on or opening my QGIS project, and it's recreated everything that I had before. I keep getting these little warning messages. Never mind. Finally, we've only looked at vector data so far, but there's a different kind of data set called raster data, and raster data are essentially pictures made of pixels. And here's one that we've got for Tanzania. It's called satellite. Unsurprisingly, it's a satellite layer of Tanzania. Great. We can load that in. Let's stick it at the bottom so that all the other layers sit on top of it. Great. To kind of visualize the difference between these 2 layer types, we can maybe zoom in. Let's zoom into the top corner of this island. You can then see, once you get close enough, you can see the pixels. Here's a pixel, here's a pixel, here's a pixel that make up the underlying raster image. You can see the very coarse nature of the just country map. and then we can see the detail of the administrative areas map. Let's zoom a bit closer. Now you can start to see that even when we zoom close enough, we can still see the pixels, but we can also see that this detailed wiggly line is actually just a series of straight lines. If we get close enough, we can see the underlying detail of that data. Oh, let's zoom back out, and we can choose to kind of display our protected areas and distribution on our background of our satellite layer. Maybe we want to keep a kind of, let's call it a BBC style background that shows the countries. We'd like to change this from green. The kind of BBC style maps tend to have a red shape, but that is transparent so that we can see through it. So there we go. We can change the colours and the densities and whatever, but essentially a map of Tanzania showing satellite image and a distribution relative to some national parks. I probably want to change the colour of the national parks now, but you see the idea. Okay, and that's the end of our practical.